Hey, folks, welcome to the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast, where sheep and goat production is not just our hobby, it's our bread and butter. Hey, folks, so we're back here again with the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast, and we're going to pick up where we left off with Stan Huber. So it's myself, Leon, with Lost Creek Wholesale, and
I'm Matt with Glenbrook Farm.
So, folks, if you didn't listen to our previous episode, I would suggest you go back and listen to that episode first. Today, we're going to pick up where we left off with Stan Huber from S. Bardi Ranch in Northwoods, Iowa. We had a really good discussion with Stan, but we ended up going down several different bunny trails, so we decided to split that episode into two episodes. Today, we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're going to discuss feed efficiency testing, as well as the feedlot operation that Stan has there with his goats. So sit tight and hope you enjoy our discussion. So Stan, tell us a little bit about the feed efficiency testing equipment you're getting, and then we'll move into hearing about your feedlot operation.
So yeah, I am getting in a unit from C-Lock out of Rapid City, South Dakota. And essentially it's a feed efficiency test station. And I want to be doing that fairly actively here, tracking that. Right now I have data across the board, but I don't have, per animal information, obviously. So that's what I'm looking at doing. Because that's huge. In a feedlot operation, that starts making, even in my small scale, I mean, man, it's really interesting watching those numbers. Right now I'm at a 4.23 pounds of feed per pound of gain. And I think from the few guys that keep track of it, that's relatively good, but obviously there's room for improvement.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's going to be a huge thing moving forward in my bucks. I'll be only at the moment, I'm only going to be testing my bucks for that. Because I believe one unit, if I remember correctly, feeds around 20 goats basically. And I think most people will be familiar with it, use a electronic tag. And as the animal puts its head in, it's standing on a scale. The feed bin is on a scales and the animal is on a scales, and it records the weight of feed that is the animal consumes. When it puts its head in, it records it. When it pulls it back out, and then it uploads it to your computer automatically. So essentially you get to see exactly how much feed that animal consumed and how much weight difference that animal is making on a day-to-day difference. And so yeah, that's what we're looking at with that.
Can I ask you what a unit like that costs?
So when I had priced mine out, it was about a year ago. They've been backlogged quite a bit. So for anybody looking, I don't take this 100%, but what my price was $8,800 for one unit. So phenomenally cheaper than a lot of the other units I looked into. That includes their first year. They come out, they help you install it to make sure it's, obviously they want, a concrete pad that's going to be sitting on, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to give you the details of exactly what needs to be prepared before they get there. That includes them coming out, helping you install it, helping it calibrate it. And then that is a once a year for, I believe, 15 years. Don't quote me on that. That includes once a year them coming out and recalibrating and just checking over things to make sure it is accurate and on track. So in the grand scheme of things, from my perspective, phenomenally cheap when you're looking at being able to accurately track that data on 20 buck kids.
It is cheaper than some of the prices I've seen. It's still a significant investment, but
absolutely.
Like you said, I think it's worth it in the long term.
Yeah, and for me, I'm restarting from scratch up here in Iowa. I didn't bring anything from Kentucky along, so I think I get that heart cry of a lot of guys with, the investment in the infrastructure and building everything from the ground up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nothing to laugh about. It just comes down to I guess, how serious I view moving forward in accurate data collection, and I think that's going to be, one of the game changers with the goat industry, because as of now, I don't know of a single soul that's doing that in the goats. Is it happening? Potentially.
Yeah.
I don't know of anybody.
I know one sheep producer that's doing it, and I think that might be who I think I'm the one that told you about the sea lock stuff, didn't I, Stan? Didn't I send you pictures of Zach Minder's stock farm up in I forget what town they're in. They're up there in Iowa.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess. I don't remember that, but you very possibly could have.
Anyway, I know Zach's doing it.
I think
And he has sheep, is what you're saying?
Sheep, yeah.
Okay. Yep.
isn't Andrew Weaver doing it down at North Carolina University? I think they have a system
Maybe.
there where they're doing the efficiency test
Yeah.
too.
I know a lot of cattle guys. Very close friend of mine that is actually selling down on cattle and expanding into goats, interestingly enough. Um, he is anal about data. I mean, he is somebody I look up to. Um, Phil Anderson, by the way, if you ever listen to this, shout out to you. Um, his data collection and information on cattle is second to none. And he's been doing feed efficiency testing on those for, I think, 15 years. Um, so I'm very familiar with it. Just I don't see it happening in the goat industry. I mean, like I said, it potentially is, and it sounds like there's some guys with maybe the sheep that are, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, definitely something would love to see more of.
Yeah, very few guys doing it, but just from the range of feed efficiency that I've seen from what those guys are selling and so forth, and talking with them too. Um Man, the range is what blows my mind. I mean, I think
Yeah.
they were talking of animals that the feed efficiency would be anywhere from a 2.5 to 1 to a 8 to 1. I mean,
Yep.
just all over the board.
I
And
believe it.
and that's incredible from a feedlot standpoint. But I think either there was some research done or they're doing some research where they think some of that is gonna convert to forages as well, or like for sheep, like to your ewe flock. So if the lambs are more efficient, or if the rams are more efficient in a feedlot test, I think some of that data is going to convert to your ewes being more efficient out on forage, which is really exciting if we could somehow test that, actually, because we're spending more money on feeding our ewe flock
Mhm.
than we are on our lambs or kids. And there's either been some research done or they're doing some research and they're thinking that some of that'll convert, which I think would be huge. Yeah.
I really wonder what the inheritability of that is, because
It I was told it's right around the same as like your weight gain, so it's high
well, it's
inheritable.
very highly inheritable
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very high inheritability. And talking to some cattle guys that have been doing it, I believe Phil, that I mentioned earlier, has told me this as well, that it does 100% translate over to forage efficiency. Rusty Burgett was down at a Savanna deal down in Missouri, and any of the NSFP guys knows who that is, I'm sure. But he would have said the same. He said they don't have 100% factual data to back that up, but on some studies over in Australia, I believe, he said they would definitely say that it is translating over to forage efficiency as well in your ewe or nanny flock,
Sure.
which
So
is, yeah, to me is absolutely phenomenal. Like you mentioned, I mean, that's a real game changer there, Matt.
so you were talking about the cattle industry, which made me think of something that you hear on the cattle side of it, and I'm sure we're going to hear it in sheep and goats. It's, well, as we select for higher efficiencies, we select for higher growth. Um, I guess the first thing that comes to mind, if we're selecting for more efficiencies, there's always the chance that we are selecting for animals that are only putting on fat rather than muscle, because that's easier and more efficient to put on. Um, so I'm just bringing that up to say that, yes, that is, anytime you select for one trait, there can be negative side effects. But if we're also selecting on carcass data, which we haven't talked about at all, and I have a hard time with because we don't get paid for it at this point, largely. But if we're also selecting for carcass data and using that to balance out, so we're not creating a lopsided animal or anything like that. I don't know. I just thought I would bring that up while we're talking about the increasing our growth rate, increasing our efficiencies, to point out that we're not looking at just that. We want to look at other things that are important too.
So that's a fair point. On that subject, and I'm not contradicting you on this, Matt. Don't take it that way. But there has been a lot of studies in other countries done on this, and I just read an article recently where they said the one trait that you can focus on without any negatives on losing another trait is feed efficiency. And I was like, is that like how is that true? And he went on to explain that they see that feed efficiency with overall health resiliency. He said that they're also thinking that it's somehow tied to maternal traits, which is a little hard for me to grasp. And he didn't have the data to back it up. But I do think in a lot of points, like you said, like you focus on one trait, you're going to sacrifice something else if that's all you focus on. I do wonder if maybe feed efficiency, and feed efficiency is also tied to parasite resistance. You tend to lose some weight gain if you focus entirely on feed efficiency, which I found interesting, but to me it makes sense. Sometimes the very most feed efficient animals aren't necessarily the highest weight gaining animals.
Right.
So I definitely agree with your point. And I think that's something that we're lacking again, especially in the goat industry, is that overall performance. But I do wonder if feed efficiency might be one of those you can focus on fairly hard without losing too much in the end.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's good. And I would agree with that. It is tied in with those other things. If the goat is more efficient on feed, there's probably other things that he's better at too.
This call is sponsored by Lost Creek Wholesale, your universal feeder distributor in US and Canada. Looking for a way to supplement your livestock with ease? Consider a saliva lick feeder. Universal Feeders saliva lick feeders offer the ability to restrict livestock's intake to a preset amount, determined by the adjustment bar depth and width on the feeder. By narrowing the width and depth of the feed in the groove, this gives us the ability to limit the amount of feed that will stick to a sheep, goat, or cow's tongue. Using Universal Feeders' patent pending easy adjustment system and saliva lick feature, we can limit sheep and goats to less than 1 pound per head per day and cattle to approximately 6 pounds per head per day. We also offer creep gate attachments for both small lambs and kids. Visit our website at www.lostcreekwholesale.com to find a dealer near you or give us a call at 717-310-3641. Let's move into your feedlot something. What can you tell us about that?
Sure, I don't know exactly where to start or stop here, so you might need a direct where I go. But I guess to start off, when I get feedlot kids in, well, I guess to start with, I used to only like try to treat the sick ones or something I thought needed treatment. No go for me. Every kid that steps off that trailer gets run through a introduction to S-Bardy rent. I used to not, just not do everything, treat them all the same. Now I do. They step off that trailer, they go into my corral system, which I just actually built this past year, and wow, is that ever a game changer? Fairly simple, but design, but it's really, really improved stuff. And then they get a, let me see if I can remember everything. When they step off the trailer into the corral system I have there, they get run through the chute. They get a CD&T shot. Zactrin. Um, I will most of the time give them a couple dewormers, two or three right off the bat, and then a pour on their back of Ultra Boss. Um, just really cleans them up, and then I will redo that again 30 days later, regardless of whether they need it or not. It does a couple things. It gets them off to a tremendous start, cleans up potentially anything they're going to have, and then if you do potentially have some other sicknesses, it limits it tremendously, and then you can treat as an as needed basis. But that has really been working good. So they go into the first pen. Um, I have four pens where they move up through. They go into the first pen and get what they call a receiver feed from Big Game, and it's designed for feedlot kids. They will be on that receiver feed and free choice hay for 2 weeks, and then after that they move into the first pen on what I call a finisher one feed, and then from there on out, from that second pen on, they're on a feed only diet. Um, I use the saliva lick feeders. Now, I would like to do like a bunk feeder system sometime, using a TMR mix potentially. I'm not sure on the dynamics of all that yet, but I have been talking to some guys, and that would give me a little more flexibility. I could work with a nutritionalist, and then I could feed each group specifically what their requirements are while they're in, as they gain weight. Like, you know, basically as they move on up through. And as I move them up through the pen, basically it's according to size. As they get to the, next size, whatever I have figured out for that pen, they'll move up into that. So a lot of sorting, a lot of hands-on. It's not free, easy money. Not even going to try to tell you that. Um, but it can be very, very profitable. Um, so yeah.
So when you bring them in and you put them on that receiver feed, that's a grain ration. Are you limit feeding that through the lick feeders, or what's that look like? Or is there maybe soy hulls or something in there that kind of cut the amount of grain that they're getting right off the bat?
So I do limit it through the saliva lick feeder. Um, Technically, they are designed as a free choice feed. The way they're designed, they have fiber and everything in it, and it's supposedly supposed to self limit.
Yeah.
On that receiver end, though, like on the first 2 weeks, I do try to limit them to about a pound to 1.2 to 1.3 pounds max per head per day. Simply because getting their gut system built up to it. It's a very high prebiotic, probiotic mix as well, pre and pro. I don't know if I clarified that. High mineral content, a lot of gut health additives. So I do limit them to, yeah. On average, I think on the groups have been about 1.15 pounds of that receiver grain per head per day. Um, and then after that, my overall average per pen average, this is scarily true, but I don't keep very accurate record on a per pen average. From pens for pens 2, 3, and 4, my overall average what they eat is 1.9 pounds per day. Now that would vary obviously according if I could have a better way of tracking each pen, which I could if I would just keep track of it, I guess.
Yeah.
So those
But
pens 2 through 4 are not getting any hay though, no forage.
no forage.
But
Absolutely not.
they're only eating about 2 pounds per head per day.
Correct.
How can that even be?
I don't know. Like what do you mean? How can that be? I'm not following. Are you thinking that's
So like what
quite
weight are the animals in pen two? Maybe
um
that's my problem.
okay, so that's gonna vary. Like all depends when you buy them in. That could be anywhere from probably on the low side of 40
Okay.
to on the high side of 60.
Okay.
And then like okay, now it depends. Like right now I've been buying some heavier kids to get in with my batch for like the end of May, beginning of June.
Hmm.
So they might potentially be 80 pounds, but then they're going to move very quickly
Mhm.
up through the pens to get with their weight size. But yeah, typically pen 2 is 50, anywhere from 40 to 55 pound average.
So
And then
pen 4
uh,
might be eating 3 pounds per head per day. The biggest
potentially,
animals.
I highly doubt it because I have them limited as well because I'm not needing, like right now, my pen 4 is probably averaging 130 pounds and I don't need to add weight. Like
Yeah.
I can if I want to, but I don't need to at all. So I have them limited about to that 1.8 to
Mhm.
2 pound max a day.
That's
And
interesting.
they're gaining a little bit, but it's not like I'm needing to push them at all. Probably my biggest consumer of feed is pen 3, which is,
Yeah.
80 to 105 ish probably.
Yeah.
And those are not free choice, but they're probably more, if I would just put a guess on it, and this is a guess, which is terrible, but probably more like 2.5 to 2.7
Mhm.
pounds of feed per head per day. Um,
So that makes a little more sense to me. Matt, what do you figure a lamb peaks out at when he's about finished?
As far as feed consumption,
Right.
um, I haven't tracked this as much as I should have, but his numbers actually make a lot of sense to me. I don't think we get on average much over 2 pounds of grain per head per day. I actually on average, I think it's right around that 2 pounds. Now we're free choicing hay and we're free choicing grain. But they're not eating that much hay, so his numbers actually make sense.
I was thinking that maybe a bigger lamb was going to push closer to 3 pounds per head per day if he was given free choice.
If he was giving free choice, but he's limiting it
Right.
I am
to,
limiting my top group, correct.
Right.
yeah, yeah,
And
So
one thing
you're
I will say, Matt, and I've seen that too. I did feed and hay for a while, and by the way, I was actually more I could add weight a little bit cheaper that way, in all fairness. It was more work, so hence I quit doing it for the time being. But they eat very little hay
yeah,
with the feed there. I mean, I don't even think they'd be eating half a pound a day average
yeah,
per head.
they
yeah,
just need enough to keep their rumen
yeah.
functioning and
Yep.
And I've done it without hay. I've fed lambs and without any soy hulls or anything in. I've fed
Yep.
lambs on a strictly a grain diet, and it works for a time. You won't want to do it long term. Um, but for the weights that we're going to, it works. And they're picking, corn fodder out of the bedding, things like that. But my breeding stock lambs are in the same pen, so I didn't feel like that was good program for them. But just putting weight on lambs, I don't know that we'd bother to feed any hay. We can just do free choice grain.
Well, and that's a good point too. So I bed with straw every week. I have a renting a one of these bale shredder thingies and put a big square in and go through and bed them. So they're obviously eating a bit of that, just
Mhm.
as
that's all they're
I
going
mean,
to
I don't
need.
know how much, but they're gonna nibble here and there and get a small bit of straw in their rumen as well, which probably helps them more than I even accredit,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they are consuming that as well a little bit, I would assume.
I think what I don't know what I wanted to point out with this is people overestimate how much grain a sheep or a goat would eat. I run into
Exactly.
producers all the time that are like, well, I'm only feeding my ewes a pound or 2 pounds of grain per head per day. That's not only. I mean, that's a lot.
That's max out. Amen to that.
You're not
Ah,
feeding a 1,500 pound cow here,
Right.
that's a lot. So like
Yep.
we're free choicing our lambs grain, so we're feeding them a lot of grain, and we're probably not seeing them go over that 2 pounds per head per day much. So people need to understand that.
Yep. Yeah, I always chuckle too when somebody says I'm only feeding them 1.75 pounds a day. I'm like, yep, fair point.
Or
I
I'm
often
only
get
feeding a bucket full of grain to my 10 ewes per day. It's not.
Yeah.
or they're
Yeah,
feeding just enough to keep them tame and bring them to the barn, every night. Well, then I like to ask that question. Well, how big's your bucket? Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
like a 5 gallon bucket. Well, how full do you fill it? Well, it might be, yeah, half full, and well, a 5 gallon bucket holds 24 to 28 pounds, just depending on what
yep,
kind of feed you're putting in there. So
yep,
yeah, you have 10 ewes feeding half a 5 gallon bucket. Yeah, you're just feeding a little bit of feed. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're feeding a good pound per head per day.
yep, exactly.
So what type of barn do you have? Is this these that these pens are in?
It's a hoop barn.
Big barn.
Sounds like you guys utilize those as well. So I went with the 32-foot wide from Kentucky Hoop Barns, simply based off of price. As soon as you go over a 32, they did the double hoops, and I didn't feel I needed that. And then the price per square foot went way up. So I have a 32 by 150 is what I have for that. So it is aggravating from the aspect of I have no center alley, so to get from from pen to pen to pen, I actually let them into my corral system. It has, broken up into multiple pens. So like I'll let them out, let the first pen out, shut the gates, let the next, like if I need to get to the middle pen or whatever. So it's a lot more work than I would like, but it works really, really well. And then the same thing, like here again, I wish there was a more efficient way, but like every week I open the gates, pen them in the feedlot, or not in feedlot, in the corral system, and then pick the feeders out. I have and drive through and bed them and set the feeders back in full of feed and bring each group back according to the pen. And so it's definitely more labor intensive than I would like, but it's quite workable in all honesty. I mean, I've kind of got into a little bit of a system and I can do it, relatively quick.
So all you need is to add, I think you said you have 4 pens, right? 4 sizes. So all you need to do is add 3 more of these hoop barns and then have one for each group. That way you can put, feed bin up, automatic feeders going in.
Yep,
And you can, just chase them outside in a dry lot area and go drive through with bedding and then bed them.
yep,
So that's all you need to do is add 3 more
yep.
barns. You'd be set
All I
up to
need to
go.
do. So you gonna be loaning me the money for that?
There's people that'll do that.
Yeah.
Used to
Oh,
be
I
real cheap.
know. I know. I agree.
Yeah.
Infrastructure cost though is all there is to it. Infrastructure cost really does. And it's a good investment. Tremendous investment, but
One thing though, our infrastructure cost on sheep and goats is very small compared to you want to get into chickens, hogs, even cattle. Like our infrastructure cost is very reasonable, I think. But still, I get
agree.
what it's still a big piece.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And when you figure on a per head basis, especially in a feedlot operation, it becomes very minimal. But it's still just that initial investment that
Yeah.
um
You
I'm
still
starting
need the
from the
money.
ground up here. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't got one of those money printing machines yet. So
yeah, we're not the government.
yeah.
Hey fellas, this is all really, really good stuff. Matt, anything you wanted to add before we wrap this up?
There's lots of things we could add, but I think we've covered a lot of really good topics. I've certainly enjoyed the conversation, and I hope the people that are listening will too.
Yeah, anything you wanted to add yet, Stan?
Nope, not really. I appreciated yeah, all the conversation and questions, and I'm still learning every day. I love to research new information, talk to other producers, and it's still a huge learning game for me. I think every day, every week, I keep on, putting another little piece to the puzzle together and figuring something out, whether it's efficiency or ways of doing things or something. And I think that's going to benefit all of us if we can, you know, maintain that.
Absolutely. So, hey, we really appreciate the opportunity to have you on here and talk about, hey, goats for once, for something different. Glad to get an episode out about goats. So, if folks want to find you, learn more about you, where can they go?
So right now, all we have is a Facebook page, S-bar-D Ranch. So S-bar-D Ranch, look us up. If you want to reach me by email, it's stanjuber@gmail.com, or give me a call at 641-732-9271, or message me or something that way. And I will be more than happy to talk with you and discuss things.
All right, very good. Hey, there's one very, very important piece we missed, and that is that Stan is a dealer for Universal Feeders. So if you're
I
up there
am.
in his neck of the woods and you're looking for a saliva lick feeder, there he gave you his Facebook page. He has some pictures on there. He got his phone number. Give him a call.
And the benefit here is you can see them in action. Come right
Hey,
out here and see them on our little farm and see what you actually think.
there you go. All right. Hey, folks. Well, we're going to wrap it up for the time being, and maybe we can have Stan back on again sometime to pick his brains more about goat stuff. So
Well,
thanks again,
thank you.
Stan. Appreciate having you on.
Yep.
Good to be here.
We'll see you. Once again, this is the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast, where it's more than just our hobby, it's our bread and butter. Thanks for listening, folks. Come back and join us as we converse with farmers and ranchers who are leaders in the industry, interview nutritionalists and veterinarians that can answer questions and offer valuable information. Got that sheep or goat question you'd like answers to, or something you'd like to hear discussion on? Give us a call at 717-310-3641. Select the option for Sheep and Goat podcast questions and leave a detailed message. Or send me an email at leon@lostcreekwholesale.net. Thanks, and see you next time.